Well, I'm just sitting here at the kitchen table, listening to BB over there eating his dog food. Of course, I work on truck stuff as much as I can at the kitchen table. Just may not be the biggest fan of that. Seemed like a good idea to look at these gauges. Point out that this is an electric fuel gauge. 6-volt tank, ignition. This ammeter is definitely needs some attention. I put a 9-volt battery on it and it's, she needs help. They're out of a 1930s International, and it seemed like a great segue to introduce the truck to you. So let's go look at this thing. Well, it's not the coolest, breeziest day in Texas. It's pretty muggy and it might rain, but check out this thing here. What a dream boat. This is a 1936 International C-1. It's a half-ton truck. And this is probably well in line with one of the craziest things that's ever happened to me, but a local international collector by the name of Tyler straight up gave this to me. Now, I don't really know how to respond to that other than that I know project that he's working on and I have parts that he needs, and I'm going to make this up to him. But I'm just blown away. This is a bucket list truck that I never really saw myself getting. And so I'd say the best way I can justify Tyler giving me such an amazing thing is to absolutely knock it out of the park and bring this thing back to life. And I think it's going to be a blast doing it. So anyway, let's get into it. It's like I said, a 36 C1. It could be a 35. I'm not really for sure. Titles can be off by a few months up to a year based on how they used to do titling. Anyway, another crazy thing about this truck is that this thing is from 39 miles from my parents' front door, from where I grew up in Wisconsin, and we're down in Texas. And I had to go get this thing in Georgetown, Texas, which is just north of Austin. I had to get it a few days before I left town and went on the huge cross-country Canadian international adventure I was just on in the last video. Now, so it was really tough to leave this thing, knowing that this was a project that I had to work on. But it was also very helpful to go up there and see George Kirkham's completely restored C1 and get some reference photos. It did not come with a front bumper, so I picked up this, pretty basic 30s looking, maybe early 40s era front bumper. Could be a rear bumper, actually, judging by the mounts on it. The guy said he thought it was a Ford. He didn't really know, but I can make mounts that fit this. I figured I could get that done faster than actually waiting to find an original International. I can down the road, then I'll grab one. I don't want any more damage to happen to these fenders here. The headlights are not original, but they are brass-tagged BLCs. So that's awesome just in itself. So I'll be looking for a set of original lights for it. But in the meantime, obviously I can get these to shine a lot brighter, which is handy. I'm not going to be driving this thing at night. This is definitely going to be, get this thing back to original. Obviously it's a period truck. Like, it's got, well, I'll show you one of my biggest challenges is that, well, that's not the original seat, but I can make something. So maybe half of the cab construction of a C series is half wood. So the wood has mostly rotted out of this truck, and it's pretty flabby in the cab. It doesn't want to, the doors don't want to close and latch. There's nothing to latch to. I have the latches, but the latches are mounted in wood. So I'll have to, you know, remake these wood pieces, which I do have the blueprints for, because my friend Natalie, who gave me the steering wheel in the last video, she also turned me on to a link where a guy had archived blueprints for all the wooden pieces that I have to make. Yeah, that chrome shifter thing, that's dandy, but that's not right. So, I mean, there's still some wood, see some there. There should be wood all along here. Still has a bolt in it, so I guess there's that. I also have a bunch of trim pieces, steel, that I don't know where they mount to. I have a parts book for this truck, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to go through and try to identify some of this stuff by pictures. Got the flat glass windshield. That's nice if I needed to replace it. However, what's looking tough on this thing is actually the bottom tray. That's kind of rusted out, and they've actually got screws holding it up and shut, actually, because you can see this is a tilt out window. So, little 6-volt electric wiper motor, amazing. I'm so excited about this. This is gonna be so cool. The seat, I'm planning to make a seat out of a bunch of different seat springs that I have and get as close to original as I can. It's got these steelies on it, but here are the original 16-inch spoke wheels, and I have the caps for 4 of them, so I need to find one more cap for the spare. Looks like the flywheel cover, some Scout gas tank through Justice Scout, completely unrelated, they're just sitting in here. This thing has amazing remnants of the 1930s paint job. It's just, if you're talking about patina, that's actually the real deal, not some dude messing up new paint with a buffing wheel. This is the remnants of pinstripe, the white underlay. Oh God, it's so cool. Oh, I'm getting carried away with this thing. So here in the fender, that's the indent where the spare tire goes. That's the clamp that holds it on. We've got a doorknob over here. The chrome surround that goes around this thing is missing, but this one's intact. The one on the driver's side is missing. Well, it's off the door. I actually have the handle itself, but this is a rust through. You could probably see the light through. That's like the worst part of the cab that I've found so far. A little corner there. That's not bad. So my plan is to repair what needs to be repaired on this thing to make it a driver and keep it as original as possible. That's the goal with this thing. I will definitely take the time to go through the fenders and try to clean up some of this stuff. It's not my priority at this point. My priority at this point is to get it running. Like I said, look at that. Old school phone number hand painted on there. Old Wisconsin license plate. It's just too cool. Get this thing running and driving. It's actually, there's things about it that make it easier than it seems. And there's some challenges for sure. Number one, I can't drive it down the road with the doors opening. So I have to at least get the door wood pieces, and it's not just boards. It's really complicated contours routed and shaped into wood, and nothing's like a straight board except maybe the floorboards. So the floorboards will be the easy part. Now, as far as the wood's concerned, I'm not really sure what species, you know, what kind of tree, what kind of wood they made this out of. But in the last video, towards the end, when I was talking about the flatbed that's going on at the M5H6 on the Army truck, there's wood that I milled with a buddy of mine a while back for that flatbed, but I have a bunch left over. So I was actually going to redeck the car hauler trailer here because that wood is just ready to be in a museum. But I think I'm going to use what I need for the doors first before I start replacing any wood on the trailer. The only concern I have about it is that wood is black oak, and so it's not light. You know, I don't know if you're supposed to use pine or something, alder. I don't know, but I know that oak is pretty heavy, So if that's gonna be a problem, I'll find that out through trial and error. But one of the challenges I have to do is, like, you know, obviously I have to shape the wood perfectly, but then I also have to seal it so that if moisture or anything doesn't permeate it. What else to talk about with this thing? It's hard to talk about it and not just get totally distracted looking at it. But there's two things I have to do first. I've already started this thing. I've already got it to run. I have to take the radiator out. The radiator cap is missing. There's some junk just in the top of the radiator. I have to make sure that the radiator doesn't have stuff all the way down in it. So I'll just take it out. I'll flush it a bunch, you know, as much as I can. See what I can get out of it. Make sure it doesn't have any obvious leaks. It's going to be easier to solder it and fix it with it out. And then the fuel tank, it actually has the original fuel tank that kind of looks pretty solid. However, despite being solid, it also looks dented terribly. So like the bottom of it's all crumpled up. So I'll go through that. I have an idea of how to fix that. One thing that I found that I like is when I'm working with a fuel tank that's dented, and it's just basically a simple dent, or, you know, it looks like something that with enough internal pressure to pop out. You can use compressed air for that. And what I like to do is I like to seal filler spouts and things on fuel tanks. Like where the sender goes, you can, you know, just drill out a piece of round sheet metal that you make yourself and seal it with a rubber gasket, and that'll seal that. But for spouts and things, like filler spouts, that's usually where you want to blow the air in. But even for sealing up fuel tanks, to do like rinsing them with chemicals like sodium hydroxide or hydrochloric acid, getting ready to, you know, coat them, I like to use those Fernco brand quick caps. They're made for PVC pipes, and they have a hose clamp on them, and usually you can find one that fits right. Sorry, there's all these mosquitoes out because it's been kind of rainy. You can find one that fits right over the spout, and sometimes you have to finagle a little bit, sometimes you have to over tighten the clamp, but they'll usually seal. And that way you can not get a bunch of caustic acids on you, which is pretty handy, you know, safety precaution to have. But also, if you're going to try to blow out dents with compressed air, you can have one of those caps with a hole drilled in it. You know, however big the tip of the air nozzle is, just insert it in there, you know, and just big enough for it to seal, and usually can pop out a bunch. Or the other way I'm thinking about this thing, which is probably how it's gonna have to go, you know, because life's not fair, nothing's gotta be easy, is that I'll probably end up having to cut this fuel tank in half so I can completely clean it out for sure, know that it's completely cleaned, knock out all the dents, get it as perfect as I can, and then weld it all the way around, you know, go through and spot weld it. And before I do that, obviously I'll go through and do the chemical bath, because I've done that before. And then, you know, you can cut it, you can weld on it, you know, all the residual fuel or combustibles or accelerants, whatever you want to call them, those are gone. And so I don't have to fill it with water. I don't have to do all this crazy stuff to work with the metal. So anyway, that's a lot about a fuel tank. Let's look at this thing. I'll show you the fuel tank real quick, and then we'll look at the motor. So on a 36 pickup, that fuel tank is way back here. So see, that's the dented in bottom. And then got the filler spout, got the gas cap. I mean, it's all there. That's the crazy part. It's just all there. Tail light, single tail light, that's period correct. So yeah, it looks solid, you know. It could definitely be worse. It could definitely be missing. How often do you even find an original gas tank that doesn't just seem to have no bottom to it? Like, especially this age, I find more KBs with rotted out gas tanks. I figured this one was just going to be completely gone. All right, so this being a 36 pickup light line, This thing originally came with an HD 213, which is a flathead that was designed by Willis, however you want to say it. So in the early 30s, Willys found themselves in a bit of a pickle, and Judge made them sell off some stuff. So what they did is they sold off a flathead design to International. And International made it into the HD series of flatheads. And then they turned into the Green Diamond in 1940. So this is a 1936 with a green diamond in it, which means, wait, did they make green diamonds before? No, because you can look at the casting code here, which is a K, right? So that K means this motor was cast, let's see, on January 10th, 1941. That's what K stands for in International Harvester date codes. Pretty typical, you know, a 30 struck would either have a worn out motor or a blow motor, you know, throw rod, something like that. And guess what? You can change the motor mounts and a few things around to match, and a green diamond will fit perfectly. If you change the motor mounts, they put in the lower dipstick for this truck, the smaller distributor, the earlier 6-volt generator with the itty bitty voltage regulator up there. Got this earlier style starter. It doesn't have the foot starter on this starter. It has a big mechanical switch that you hit with your foot. So that's a little different. It's got the original air cleaner. That's awesome. Original carb. This is the radiator I got to pull today. That's something I've got to replace. Obviously, I'll replace all these hoses. I mean, we got heater hose that doesn't connect, heater hose closing off the heater itself, which typically means it had a leak. It's got the earlier style water pump with the open side. All these radiator hoses on the other side have to be replaced. It needs a fan belt. I'm going to keep this thing 6 volt, but I might want to redo that wiring. That brake light switch, there's a little rod. That rod's got to get connected to something. Why is that? Well, it's because this is a mechanical brake light switch. Now, most International brake light switches that you'll see are hydraulic, but this is mechanical. So, you know, the motion of the pedal is what activates that. Now, why would you need a mechanical switch on this? Normally, you'd have that on things like emergency brakes that don't use hydraulics, or, you know, transfer case levers that, you know, just to show the position. Well, the reason you have that mechanical brake switch is because they are mechanical brakes. There's no hydraulics on this thing. That's another great reason to leave this all original, is because you don't want to get this thing going 60 miles an hour or more and then trying to stop it like the Flintstones, because mechanical brakes are just levers and, you know, using leverage, a little bit of leverage, and your foot, like however much power you can put onto your foot into the brakes. All right, so let's get back to what I actually need to do this truck, because I can just get carried away talking about it. So I got to pull this radiator out. I got to make sure that's clean. The motor itself, I know runs. I got it to fire on the trailer.
You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so how cool is that? So we know this motor runs. It doesn't have any coolant in it. I'd much rather be doing all this stuff in my garage. It's about to get really hot in Texas, and I'd love to have this in my garage so that I have a little AC unit in the wall and stay a little cooler. I'm trying to get this thing done basically in just a little over a week so that I can drive it at least 10 miles. We're having a meetup in about a week. It's a pretty low stress meetup, as in the brewery that's hosting it is putting it on, not the local IH organizers. So being one of the local IH organizers, it's a lot less work. But anyway, this brewery is putting on this event, and their mascot is a Scout 2. And so they have a Scout 2 on the beer label. And one of the things that Tyler said when he gave me this truck, I was like, guys, what do you want for it? You know, it's like, I can't believe the situation. They give me give me some beer. So he's about to get some International Harvester Scout 2 labeled beer, which I think he'll appreciate. On the other hand, this brewery is the same one that was in the video of the Toys for Tots a few videos back. And we have several meetups there. We usually do a Toys for Tots there every year because they have the Scout 2. We like to do events there. They have a lot of room for parking and the food's good, even if you don't drink like I don't. The other part of this brewery is that it's really about 10 miles from my house, maybe less. So I want to be able to drive this thing there. And I think probably the basis of this channel and all the hijinks that I do, other than having, you know, tech videos or tutorials about how to fix things on these trucks, the other thing I like to do with them is give myself crazy deadlines and drive them long distances. And while I don't have a long distance for this to drive, I do want to set a crazy goal for myself and get this thing done in a week so I can actually drive it. I have plates on the way. I have some gauges, a lot of my instrument gauges, heat, ammeter, they're kind of wonky. I don't trust them. And so I usually have boxes of old International gauges, but I don't have anything this old. So I found a gauge cluster. The speedometer for this thing seems good. I found a gauge cluster on eBay today. I ordered that. I gotta do something about this tire. I've got a tire in the van that came off of this thing that was flat. This is a spare that I grabbed off my old B100 parts truck, and it immediately went flat. So that's special. So the spoked wheels going to the powder coater. I'm gonna get those completely sandblasted down to nothing, and then get them powder coated like gloss black or something. Let's see what else. But in the meantime, those aren't going to be done in time for next weekend. But I can probably go to, you know, the used tire shop on South Congress up in Austin and grab a tire that'll fit that or replace that. So it won't be the best, but it'll get the job done. And let's see what else. So I got to pull the gas tank. I have to pull the radiator. I think going to this brewery, the fuel tank will have to be a tank sitting in the back of the bed. There's no way I'll have that tank done, because even if I get the thing dropped, everything fixed on it by Tuesday, I don't think that's enough time for it to sit and cure. Because I made an old video about fuel tanks, and I said in that video that I use cream, and I don't use cream fuel tank treatment anymore. It breaks up with ethanol. It might take years, but it'll break down. The only thing that I use, the only thing that seems to stand up to that stuff is the PR15. I've heard about was it KBS or something, fuel tank liner. That's supposed to be great, and very similar to PR15. But PR15's what I use, and it takes like 4 days to cure. And I don't want to hear about anybody saying this stuff failed because they couldn't wait that long. Like, I'm not going to do that. I've done it completely to the book, and that stuff seems to cure like glass inside the gas tank, and I've never had a problem with it. I've had problems with red coat. I've had problems with cream, like to the point that it debilitated vehicles, to the point that you'd have to flush out the entire fuel system, rebuild the carb, you know, replace all the fuel line, pull the fuel tank, you know, strip it, and then reline it. So we're not going that route. We're going the PR15 route. So if I get the fuel tank off today and I can get it completely done by Sunday and have it curing, then we've got a chance. But the chances of that are pretty low. I've got to go to a truck show in Fredericksburg with Holden Brothers on Saturday. So we'll, you know, it's like that cuts into time. It's like it's all a matter of time at this point. So weather's not looking great either. So I need to get this radiator out of here and start looking at this fuel tank. I'm gonna try to put the other tire on here because it seemed like it was holding air. And if it leaks down by the next time I come out here, then I'll take it in and get it replaced. In the meantime, I'll get something on this rim so I have a spare. I think that's all I got for right now. So yeah, time to get this radiator out here, time to get the fuel tank out of here, take it back to the shop, get started on this project. I'd like to have this just be an intro and just walk around this thing and ooh and ah about it, but honestly, I've got a lot to do on it. And honestly, the wood is gonna take up most of the time that I have to work on it. So anyway, let's get after it. All right, I just got this hose off, the radiator hose off. Two things. One, you can see that seam is shot right there, so that's a lot of soldering right there. There's a bunch of junk in there, and then this hose was full of acorns and stuff. Now, if there's a thermostat intact there, then hopefully that will keep that from filling the head with junk. But we'll just see what it ends up being. Yeah. Yeah. Jesus. Oh, I gotta bring the vacuum out here for sure. Well, there's a lot to deal with here. All right, so I'll get the radiator out. I might just take the whole front shell off. 2 bolts there, 1 bolt there. It looks like that whole thing comes out. And take this whole thing with me because these things, it's got a line of these square head bolts all the way down with these squished together, kind of carriage bolt looking screws. But anyway, I got to get those out. And instead of risking dealing with this fan and all that stuff, which clearly I have to take apart anyway, it's just gonna be easier to take this whole front shell off. Okay, so thought that was a great idea, but I was trying to show it to you. This thing is bent back to the point that the bolts, I can't get to the bottom of them here. So I have to go back to the house and get like a big crescent wrench and try to bend those back out to get that. Problem is, there's a big storm coming in, and just texted me from the house that she hoped it didn't blow away because it sounds really bad out there. So I'm gonna continue on this until I can't anymore, but I'm gonna get the cameras off so I don't, destroy those. Anyway, I will get back to the video and bring you all back in when I'm actually working on something and we're making progress again. Well, that was fun. Ooh. That tube is messed up. All right, well, back in the garage with the radiator shell out, and I'm working on taking out the radiator out of the actual shell housing. These are what I'm up against. They're small, they almost look like carriage bolts, but they're flathead bolts basically. And it's too narrow to get a screwdriver in there, and they've clearly been squished together. So what I've been doing to combat that is going through with a small cutting wheel on a Dremel. I've got all of them out on the other side. It's going pretty good. As far as damage on the radiator, this is that seam I was talking about. Right now it's butted up, it's off. You can see there's a bunch of garbage in there. So I've got a lot to do on it, but this is a progress so far. Yeah. Now that this thing is out and I can see all sides of it, you can see in there, This seam is all open. It's not bad on the sides. This fins could look a lot worse. None of them are discolored to the point that it looks like stuff has been leaking out of them. The radiator was sitting in the truck with the bottom petcock open, but unfortunately, like I said, the cap is missing, and so there's all kinds of junk in there. I've got a lot of it out, but you can't be sure that it's all out. The front seam has a few marks of discoloration and corrosion there where it looks like maybe you had steam escaping. There's probably some leaks there. Front fins look great. That little spot's not a big deal. Around here it looks pretty good. And of course, that does not look great. Obviously, I thought this was JB Weld, but it's actually a really bad soldering job. Just they didn't do a very good job. And in here you can see, well, it seems kind of questionable. Clearly you can see the solder isn't filling the crack there. This came off, you know. Of course, the solder job on the bottom is holding on both of these, and this solder job is good. I think that's all factory solder. This guy's solid. Now, seeing it like it is now, my plan is changing a little bit. I don't believe I'll have this done by the weekend for the show, or excuse me, the meetup. It's not really a show, it's just a meetup. And if you know me, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I believe to my soul that anything worth doing is worth overdoing. So my thoughts on this are as follows. I think I'm going to go through, desolder this and this one here and up here, just so I can get these off of here and give me clear access to the sides. And I'm going to go around this whole thing with a torch, heat it up, and desolder all of this all the way around so I can take the top tank off. I think that's the only way that I will be able to get this clean enough that I know that it will solder and actually clean out the inside of this, because like I said, there's a bunch of dirt and acorns and shells and stuff in there, and I want to make sure it's clean. So if I take this all apart, I can clean the radiator tank completely. Once that's done, I actually know that the solder will hold. Younger me probably would have gone through here, brushed this with a wire brush as much as I could see, and try to stuff some flux in there and solder it, but I just want to be able to trust this thing a little more than that. This is a non-pressurized radiator, so it's got that going for it, but a leak is a leak. All right, so that pushes the timeline back a little bit. I don't think this truck is going to be making the meetup on Saturday, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes. It's already Monday. When I filmed the start of this video, I think it was Saturday, might have been Friday. Makes it a little tight when you have a radiator that you need to take down to pieces and solder back together. Who knows? I might pull it out of the hat, but it's unlikely. But I do want to do this truck justice. I want to do it right, and sometimes that means forgoing all the fun stuff and just taking the time to do it right. So that said, thanks for watching. I really appreciate y'all. If you saw my last video, or if you missed it, I mentioned our friend Nicole, who was in a horrific accident recently. We've started a GoFundMe for her. We need all the help we can get to help her. I put a link to the GoFundMe in the video description. Check it out if you got a minute. Really appreciate it. And yeah, other than that, stay safe, like and subscribe if you don't mind. And I will see you in the next video.